I'm sorry, you never put Nancy minutes back, but if that was the low point of your day, then everything is going well from here on out. I want to thank everyone for letting me be here and spend the day with you all. When Irene told me that I only had 10 minutes to speak, I figured that's probably about 8.5 more than I actually need. The reason I'm here is thank you, Spike, I appreciate that. No, you're not getting my extra time. The reason, I'm only really here for 2 reasons. And no, they're not to make sure that Irene won the vice chairmanship over Noda, although that's a bonus. The real reason I'm here is to make sure that everyone meets my wife, Nancy. Who is, of course, the reason that anything goes right in my life. So I figured I better bring her here and make sure this conference goes okay. And of course, the other reason is to meet Maat, because I've been stalking him for the past couple of months. Spoke on the phone, which was very wonderful. But now this is the 4th convention I've been at where you were, and I keep either showing up immediately after you left. You know, at one point I was actually wondering whether this guy actually exists or if it's just some AI type of thing. So stalking him for a couple of months. It's a great pleasure to meet him. Look, the other thing I want to do with my extra 8 minutes, now that I absolutely don't need it, is to tell you a few things, talk about a few things that you already know, because that's my job. I used to spend a lot of time teaching, and of course, when you're a teacher, you know that you spend your time telling kids and young adults things they already know if you're at your best. It turns out to be absolutely true, and don't tell me that you didn't suspect it, that your government took money from you and from your neighbors and from your friends, forcibly, and my dad needlessly to this crowd, and invested it abroad, running it through a shell corporation that you knew nothing about, put it into a European nation, again, not that you knew anything about, and invested it with a team of young men who blew up a pipeline at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, which is a very strange story. I wish that it didn't turn out to be true, but again, please don't tell me that you didn't have at least some suspicion of this. This is a very bad story for a lot of reasons. One is that it cost the people of Germany and a few other European nations who had invested in this silly pipeline tens of billions of dollars. It's going to cost the people of Germany tens of billions of dollars over the next few years, per year, by the way, in extra energy costs. This is something that we would have characterized as an act of war just a generation ago. And interestingly, let this sink in, this would have been characterized as an act of war against the people of Germany, which is an odd thing to think about all the way through, particularly because if you were to listen to the White House, you would realize the irony real quick that notwithstanding what they talk about as their primary objective, this is actually having the side effect of increasing the flow of petrodollars to the government of Russia. As bad as that story is, I'm going to ask you to put a pin in it just for a second, because none of what I've just told you about that story is, in my view, the worst aspect of it. Because it turns out to be also true, and equally true, that your government took money from you and from your neighbors and from a lot of other people around the United States, again, forcibly, I might add, needlessly, and invested it, again, running it through a shell corporation, abroad, again, in a fashion about which you absolutely knew nothing, in order to, wait for it, invest in a laboratory in Wuhan, China. It turns out that this money was, if you were to listen to Dr. Fauci, and I know you all do, it turns out that this was not targeted for gain-of-function research, but merely facilitated it because, of course, all funds are fungible. It turns out that a virus was created that wasn't otherwise extant in nature and leaked. By the way, just a pause, please God, let us find out someday that this was an accident, right? Don't tell me you weren't thinking it. So it accidentally leaked, and it killed a couple of million people in the United States and several million people around the world, bless you, and bless the rest of us. This is a very bad story, too. It's a very bad story because of the death involved. It's also similar in the previous story because we didn't know anything about it. And as bad as that story is, I'd like you to put a pin in it, too, just for a moment, because nothing that I've said about that story is, in my view, the worst aspect of that either. It turns out to also be true that a young man working for the federal government some weeks ago recently faced a very weird and precarious situation where he felt like he only had 2 options. One was to release classified information and face the possibility of being prosecuted. Anyone over the age of 19 smart enough to feed himself knew that that was a certainty that he was going to be prosecuted and they would ruin his life. Or keep information a secret that he felt the American public had a right to know about. He did so in a very strange way, so maybe we don't pursue that right now. But what I would like you to do is to think for a moment along with me about what the information was that was released. If you were to listen to the CNN version of this story, which is to say the White House version of this story, this information is a characterization of how well the war is going in Ukraine. There's some other information in it too. This was the primary aspect of it that really makes it interesting to any number of people around the United States and around the world. What it says is that money was taken from you, again, forcibly, and your neighbors and a lot of other people around the United States, was invested abroad, again, in a fashion about which you knew absolutely nothing. And by the way, it hasn't gone well. It hasn't gone well in the sense that it's probably not going to yield anything strategically useful to the United States. It hasn't gone well for the people of Ukraine. And this is the information that the CNN and the White House believe that you shouldn't have learned about. Think for a moment about the information itself. The people of the Russian government, they know damn well how well the war is going. They're there. The people of Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, they also know damn well how well this war is going. Who are the people from whom this information was meant to be kept? Us. You. I don't mean you personally, but us as American citizens. And again, I would argue that the worst part of that story is not that itself. These three stories that seem like they have absolutely nothing to do with each other. The worst aspect of them, of each and all of them, together, is that they have absolutely everything to do with each other. That yours is a government that operates in the shadows, and does so because it realizes, just like we are waking up to, that it operates not for your interests, but for its own, in order to bring power to itself, to aggrandize the politicians who run that government, that it's been behaving this way for generations. The good news, if there is any, and we might argue that there isn't, is that an increasing proportion of the American electorate is waking up to this. This creates a huge opportunity for this party in 2024, if we play our cards right. We may or we may not. We have missed opportunities in the past. But rather than talk about the opportunity in 2024, what I'd like you to consider is that this is not merely an opportunity for us. My greatest fear is that before the end of this century, the government of the United States will effectively go out of business. It's fiscally on a track toward bankruptcy. And that's not the worst part. That's not the part I fear. The part I fear is that people like us won't care. That we might even view that as a good thing. Because this government is in the business not only of operating without you at heart in terms of developing what its interests are, but counter to your interests. Republicans and Democrats have now for a generation listed as their number one priority, keeping the other one out of power. This is where authoritarianism comes from. We used to make fun of other places around the world that saw, in a democracy, authoritarianism grow right out of seemingly nothing. We thought it couldn't happen in the United States, and yet here we witness it every day increasingly. This is not merely an opportunity for us. This is our obligation. We are the people who are the philosophical descendants of the people who put this nation together. Our nation was put together for only one good reason, and trust me, I will tolerate no argument on this point. It was put together to protect the rights of individual citizens. Nobody crosses an ocean in the 15th century, the 16th, the 17th, or the 18th for any other reason than to live under a government that will leave it alone. Leave him alone, leave her alone, and your family alone. That's the reason this Constitution was put together. Does anyone in this room actually believe that a Democrat will stand up for your rights as individuals? That a Republican will stand up for your rights, your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights? It's nice to meet you finally. Your Fourth Amendment rights as a police officer in a recently passed life? I can tell you the answer is no. Does anyone even know a Democrat who can spell 10th Amendment? Not anymore. And for this reason, I like to quote something that our friend Larry Sharp said recently: it's time to pick up a shovel. And if I can add on to that, our idea has to be not to wield a small shovel, but a large one. For me and Nancy, this is our shovel. We all have, individually speaking, what we can do. Look around the room. It's a wonderful group. But we're 30, 40 people, right? Including the folks that ran out because they couldn't stand such good food. You multiply that 50 for all the conventions going on around the United States. It seems like a big number to us, but it's not, is it? It's a very small number. These are the people on whom we depend, because you cannot depend on anybody else. That is the sorry truth. So we have a big task in front of us, and it's going to require not only strategy, but execution and doing it just right. But I would add, and I ask and implore you to remember, that this is not merely an opportunity in 2024. This is an obligation. This is our call to duty. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
So I want to add on to what Mike said. I personally am not hopeful in any way, shape, or form. I said this to y'all in Reno, like I don't, like this room might be able to do something, but I'm personally, I think America is very, very comfortable. You know what I'm saying? So I personally am just kind of waiting for the lights to go up and to start fresh. And that's unfortunate. That's very nihilistic. It's very nihilistic. Now, if I was to try to like advocate for something, to Mike's point, it would be okay. If there's 30 to 50 of us in this room, and if we can force multiply in a demographic that people actually will listen to, there is no other right market, if we use in those terms, it sounds callous, but that's what I'm going to say, other than the urban demographic. It just, the hood was libertarian the whole time. No one in the hood fucks with the police at all. And I'm not saying that rude in a rude way, right? I'm saying in the sense of, when I say the police, I mean like the state. Like an individual officer, we might be like, oh no, he's cool. I'll tell you a story real quick. One time when I was selling DVDs, allegedly, I got caught. I was on the SEPTA train. I used to sell movies on the train in Philly. And I would sell eighths of weed. If you go on your phone right now, there's an Instagram page called DVDs and Trees. It was me. I promise you. I promise you. It was, I made a lot of money selling DVDs and trees. And I would do 3 movies for $10 and an eighth. And it was $50. We give you an eighth of weed, allegedly. And 3 movies. And I was selling weed, and I used to pay off the SEPTA officers with movies. Not pay them off, but I would be like, look, bro, I got a license to sell, but I can't sell these. And the SEPTA cops would be like, bro, I see you out here all the time. You actually keep a lot of the silly shit down, so if you see me, I don't care. And I would be like, yo, man, that's really cool. Did you see insert whatever movie? And I would just give them movies. In their mind, they're like, he's not the problem, right? So fast forward, we're selling, it was a new officer. And this new officer is like, I see you selling movies, you can't sell movies. And I had a warrant, lie to you not. I had a warrant for like unpaid tickets. This is when the traffic court was on Spring Garden in Philadelphia, right? So they're like, look, man, you gotta go to the radio, click, click, click. Hey, man, I'm at such and such and such, and the guy selling TV. So the cops that I knew came, and they showed up. And one of those guys was like, pull him to the side. I had a gun, pills, weed, and movies in my suitcase that I would travel around up and down the train selling weed, pills, movies, and all that. And this officer looked at me, and he was like, whose gun and weed and all of this is? And I was like, it's y'all's if y'all want it. This is a 100% true story, right? That one individual officer out of the other 4 that got called to that scene, they stepped over to the side, they put my drugs, my weed, my gun in a trash bag. They put it in the trash, under a bag. They put the cashier in the booth, said, yo, Maj, you good? I said, yeah, I'm good. You want me to hold your suitcase? Because I was very respectful to all of the, employees. He took my suitcase full of movies, which was a felony. After 100, it's a felony, right? That's the only thing I got on my record. I have a jacket, like a stripe on my jacket for counterfeiting, right? So the cashier takes the movies into the booth. The cop puts my gun and drugs in the trash. They take me to the court. I'm like, I got a warrant for a ticket. And they go, yeah, I set up this payment plan and I leave. I go back to the train station. I take my drugs and the gun out of the trash. I get my suitcase and I go back to selling movies on that same exact train. Now, an individual officer said, this is not something that this person needs to go to jail for. That's what happened. So I can't in good faith say the hood doesn't all the way fuck with an individual police officer. I can't in good faith say that. Black Lives Matter would not exist if I catch that case. It's a felony case. We gun, I'm going to jail. Or I got the right lawyer or something, right? My point in saying that is, my demographic, when I tell that story, goes, yo, that cop is love. But they still have a disdain for the state. Because that is the exception, not the rule in our community. Right? So because of that, we have a demographic, not because we just out of the womb, we don't like dudes that wear blue uniforms. It's not the case. It's the engagement in that community the entire time. When Rodney King got the shit beat out of him, the hood wasn't going like, oh my God. Everybody that was from somewhere else was like, oh my God. The hood was like, yeah, it's like Tuesday. Get my point? So the point here is, in order for me to be wrong about my nihilism or nihilism, however you pronounce it, the only way that we do that is we strengthen the numbers from the demographic that we already have a tailor-made audience for. That's it. Other than that, we are going to fucking lose. I got some land. I'm not giving nobody my guns. I mean, they can get the fucking bullets. My point in saying that is, that's my personal level of commitment to where I see the thing going. The writing's on the wall. We're doing like 7 out of 10 of all of the things that every empire does before they like poof. The problem is we weren't supposed to be an empire in the first place. Right? So, how much more minutes I got?
All night.
So, the only way that I can, so the reason why I come to all of these, right, is because you guys actually have a solution. But I say this at everything. If you come to some of these before, you're going to hear me say certain things because they're repetitive. They're going to be repeated until it changes. We have to do outreach in a different demographic. We are horrible at it. And I can keep saying we're horrible at it and people will agree and all that. Or in 2 years, we could be like, Maat, you got to fucking say something else because we're great at it. That's actually the goal. So, I'll ask some questions and give some perspective based on what your struggles with outreach have been. And I can just tell you what some of the things that have worked for me doing outreach with Black Lives Matter. Same thing, everybody's like, no, they're not going to listen to you. Nobody in the community is going to buy guns. No one in the hood is going to, and now we just make people like the hood is buying guns. Lawful.
That's right.
Right? So my point in saying it is I can't really help you if I can't serve you. I can't serve you if I can't give you an answer based on tried and true methods that have worked. So if y'all want to do a Q&A, just ask me whatever question. I'll tell you what will work in my experience, in my demographic, where I've had successes, and where I felt completely flat on my face. And I don't think you should or should not do that.
So we were passing out flyers, promoting the yoga class and Black Lives Matter class a couple weeks ago. Flagged a guy down in the car, stopped in the middle of the intersection. We talked for like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
His main concern in his community is black people killing black people.
Yeah, you're going to hear that a lot.
How do we address that?
You can.
White.
I mean, as horrible as that sounds, right?
But they're looking for a solution.
Yeah. Yes and no. It depends. For the context for that, I'll have to say how he presented that to me. If he was already as nihilistic as I am, you can't solve it, right? I'm just willing to work, but I don't think we're going to win. Do y'all get that? I don't think we're going to win. I think it's going to have to, my nana used to say some people got to bump it. I think America has to bump it. First, America has not atoned for the biggest stain on our flag, slavery. And I know some of y'all are going to say, well, every citizen participated in slavery in world history, cool, right? But to me, I think those things are tied together. But anyway, I'm super nihilistic is my point. If that person was asking you that based on, hey, do you guys as libertarians have a philosophy for not to stop people from killing people in their community? If he asks it that way, that person's open to an answer. And I do have an answer for that. You introduce them into libertarian philosophy, the concept of, we just kind of like don't want to hurt people and they don't want to take their stuff. And if we remove the state from being so involved in this community's everyday actions, a lot of that engagement, the war on drugs alone, that alone, increases law enforcement or citizen law enforcement interactions. Because I'm not getting arrested because I'm rolling up on my porch, and you're now rolling up on me on my porch, so forth and so on. You just translate that into libertarian ideology.
So the last few speeches that I've given are to crowds of people who are not libertarian, and my job was to convince them to become libertarian. So I'm just going to go ahead and give that exact same speech. So who here, show of hands, who here considers yourself a libertarian? Okay. My work for the most part seems to already be done, but they did ask me to give a speech, so I'll stick around. So now who here has always been a libertarian? Show of hands. Never been a Republican, never been a Democrat, never voted, never identified as a liberal or conservative. So, yeah. You'll notice, we have one. You'll notice my hand wasn't raised either, because I wasn't just a Republican, I was the worst kind of Republican. I was a neocon. Yes, no, yes, thank you. So there's a reason that there aren't a lot of second-generation libertarians, and it's because we're a small movement. Now, even though, if you look right now, increasingly more so than ever before, a record number of people are done with the status quo. There was a poll that came out recently, something like 87% of Americans said that they don't like the direction that the country's going in. Now, the first thing I thought was, the hell are these 13% of people that like how things are going? But once you think of that, you realize that a supermajority of Americans hate where we're going. And there was another poll that was somewhere in the 70 percentile range where Americans said that they're sick of voting Republican and Democrat, they want a viable third party. And of course we think, fantastic. We're the Libertarian Party. We're a viable third party. Surely they're all lining up to vote for us, right? We know how that goes. We know that they're frustrated with the status quo, but the problem is they don't know a good alternative to it. Many of them think that the status quo, the entire problem, is with exactly one half of the ruling class, and that the only people that can save us are the other half of the ruling class. And as ridiculous as that sounds, many of us were once in that boat to begin with. And the reality is, they are sick and tired of how things are going, but they don't know that this is the way forward. We could lose them to communism, or socialism, or fascism, or nationalism, or anything else. We could lose them if we don't connect their frustration with a solution that's going to fix it. I dare say, and I just came up with this now, that we are solutionaries. Oh, yes. If anyone would like to use that, you're more than welcome to. If you use that, you don't even have to credit me. And anyone else is welcome to as well. But the reality is, we have to connect their frustration with our solutions. And we know the best way to do that, thankfully. We find them on the internet being wrong. We tell them they're wrong, that they're wrong. And we make memes about how stupid they are. Thank you. Now, I always worry how many people applaud that when I say that, but as cathartic as that is, that's not what got any of us here. We didn't say, wow, that person really made fun of us on the internet. I want to find out more about what they believe. Right? Most of us, and I'm one of them, but a good number of us are here because of Ron Paul, or because of some other great messenger. Some of us are here because of a personal experience that showed us just how screwed up the status quo is and made us realize that it was never going to be fixed. Some of us are here because of what happened during the lockdowns. Some of us are here because of what happened during the War on Terror. I'm one of them. Some of us are here because of what happened during the financial meltdown in 2008 and what happened after that. There are many things that brought us here, but usually it wasn't just that frustration that brought us here. At some point, someone or something met us where we were in that moment, empathized with us, and then connected it with the solution. I feel like Maat already did part of my speech. Connected it with our common sense solutions. So, how do we do that? Well, you're already doing that in one way. We need a viable party. We need a libertarian party that is unequivocally and unapologetically libertarian, and that presents candidates for office who are not just a lesser of three evils, but a complete departure from the status quo. So you're already doing that here. But the reality is, most people don't change their minds because of a political party or a candidate for office. That might be part of it, but they're not going to say, I was, a conservative Republican, or I was a progressive Democrat, or I didn't even know what I thought, but then I heard about this political party and now I'm all in. That does happen, but it doesn't always happen. We have to meet them in other places. Politics is downstream of everything else. We have to meet them culturally, we have to meet them with technology, we have to meet them, whatever your talent is, that is every bit as important as you're being involved in the party here. Stay involved, be more involved than you already are, but that's only part of it. Maj is doing that with Black Lives Matter. He's reaching a demographic that, looking around this room, is a good demographic for us to be reaching. And he's doing it in a way that really only he can, by showing how gun rights are actually going to solve a lot of the problems that are in that community. And he's also providing a blueprint for others to do it in their community. I'm doing a similar thing with my organization, You Are the Power. We're finding people who are in need, we're meeting them where they are, we're organizing their communities to help them, and then we're using that as an opening conversation about the fact that the thing that we're fighting is too much control being in the hands of too few people. And that the answer is to put the power back in the hands of the people. Now, I'd love to have you be a part of You Are the Power, and Maj would love to have you as a part of Black Lives Matter. Obviously, you want to continue to be involved in the Libertarian Party of Delaware. But whatever it is you do, understand that we are not just trying to win votes. We are not just trying to win membership. All of that is downstream of convincing people that not only is the status quo failing them, but there is an actual viable solution, and it's the libertarian way.